Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's class of the weekly current affairs webinar. Hello everyone, those who have joined in on time. We'll wait for a couple of minutes, let others also join in, and then we'll begin the class. Thank you so much. Good evening everyone. Hello. Can you please confirm the audio and the video both are absolutely fine? If you can once quickly confirm the audio and the video both are working fine for you. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for confirming that. Thank you. Perfect. Good evening. Also, a very happy Valentine's Day. Those who celebrated it, great. Those who did not celebrate it, even better. I hope you utilized your time better if you did not celebrate it with someone. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Perfect. Perfect. So, this is your time again where we catch up on the weekly current affairs, where we catch up on some of the most important topics that were in the news in the last week or so. Let's quickly see what is it that we will be discussing today. We have these 7 topics lined up here for you. We will be starting our discussion with the Indian eye drop issue. Yet again, there is an Indian medicine that is in the news for a lot of wrong reasons. There is an Indian pharmaceutical company who has been making certain eye drops where the eye drops have not been up to the mark. There have been certain adverse reactions of this eye drop in some nations, and this topic has again come in the news. Then we will be discussing about the NISAR satellite, a joint collaboration between NASA and ISRO. So we'll be discussing what that is exactly, how is it that ISRO and NASA can collaborate in a better way. Then we'll be discussing about PACS, Primary Agriculture Credit Societies, because the government of India is trying to give it a push to make it much more digital now. Then the Govardhan scheme, something that was discussed in the budget as well. The Govardhan scheme, what is it? What is it that the government is trying to achieve with this? How is it that the biogas is important? How is biogas different than compressed biogas? So on and so forth. All of that will be discussed. Then we'll go on to the next topic, that will be the expunging of words from the parliament. So in the recent ongoing parliament session, we saw Rahul Gandhi making a speech. We saw Prime Minister Modi also making some speeches. And we saw that certain parts of the speech given by Rahul Gandhi were expunged, that is removed. So we'll discuss what that is, how does it work, what are the rules about it. Then we'll be discussing about the warrior or wolf warrior diplomacy with respect to China specifically, what that is, how does that work, all that will be discussed. And then our last topic will be about the Enola tribe. Certain people of Enola tribes have been conferred with the Padma Shri award as well this year. So we'll be discussing what that tribe is, why is that tribe so important, how are they making a name for themselves beyond India as well. All these things will be discussed today. So once again, those who have joined in, a very warm good evening. I hope all of you are doing good. And let's start our catch up of the weekly current affairs. First, the first topic that we have in the news again is that unfortunate news from Indian point of view. That is, an Indian eye drop has been called out in the US because an Indian company made eye drop has had certain adverse effect on some people, having an impact on their eyesight, some people even turning blind. So that has come in the news. So basically the news is the US agency, that is the FDA, that is the agency that regulates all the drugs, the medical supplies in US, they have warned that an India-made eye drop has been responsible for adverse impacts on multiple patients, including infection, blindness, and even one death. Now, this is extremely important for various reasons. I'll tell you why. India, as you know, is extremely proud of our pharmaceutical industry. India is very proud to say that we are the pharma capital of the world. We are the pharma capital of the world. In fact, if you realize this, India, in fact, tries to open up as many markets in the Western nations as possible for Indian pharmaceutical products. India has been arguing with USA, India has been arguing with Europe also that you should give more market access to Indian made medical devices or Indian made medicines, but they have not been doing that. Now, in this aspect, on one hand, where India is saying that European countries, USA, etc., should allow Indian medicines to be circulated openly and freely. In that aspect, when you have these kind of news stories, that is the Indian medicine having an adverse impact, and this is not the first time that this has happened. We have seen how there were news stories from other nations as well, where Indian cough syrups were related to certain adverse impacts, including the death of children. So this news has again marked or has again put a question mark on the quality of the medicines that are produced in India. The FDA has said that there's a potential bacterial contamination and this particular eye drop should not be used by anyone. The company that makes it in Chennai, on the other hand, has said that we realize there is some problem and we have voluntarily called back all our eye drops. Now, in these kind of news stories, you should also know if you are thinking of what to read, what to remember from the examination point of view. See, from the examination point of view, it is not very important for us to remember how many people died, although it is very unfortunate. But it is not important for us to remember how many people died, how many people turned blind, which was the name of the company. That is not important for us. What is more important for us from the UPSC examination point of view is to look into the process. How is it that an Indian company can sell their medicines outside India? What are the provisions? Which is the regulatory body in place? Who is it that gives us the permission? Now, with all of that keeping in mind, do understand there is one very important organization that plays a key role over here. That organization is called CDSCO. CDSCO here stands for, let me write it here for you, Central Drugs Standard Control Organization. Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, CDSCO. This is the organization that is responsible for maintaining standards of medicines in India. So they are the ones who maintain standards, meaning that they have to ensure that proper standards, certain minimum standards of medicines are produced in India. Now, what kind of permissions do we require if we have to sell a medicine in India? It is again CDSCO only that has a responsibility. They can conduct inspection at any stage. So there are random inspections that they can undertake. They can enter any of those factories, those manufacturing units which are manufacturing any medicines. They can take up any stock of medicine and see randomly if the medicines are up to the quality mark or not. These are random inspections, meaning that it is not necessary that every batch of every medicine will be tested by this regulatory authority. Please do remember that. I'll repeat what I said. It is not necessary that every batch of every medicine produced will be tested by this regulatory authority. They usually take out certain random samples in between at different stages and they see if these samples are at the minimum prescribed quality or not. Similarly, when the drugs from India have to be sold outside India, again the same process is applied. So if there is a drug, there is a medicine that is produced in India, it is quite possible that that vaccine or that medicine might not be tested with the CDSCO and it has already been exported. It is possible that it can happen because the random testing process usually means that there are some samples which might not be tested. So what usually happens? When Indian company sells some product, let's say we are selling a medicine to a country, let's say we are selling some medicine to USA. Okay, USA would expect that Indian regulators like CDSCO would have checked the quality for every medicine. So they would expect that when the medicine is being sent to US, it is safe. On the other hand, the Indian regulator would say that we expect when you are importing the medicine, you would do your own background check. So usually there is quite a lot of responsibility shifted from one place to the other. The buyer says we think that the seller should have taken all the precautions. The seller says we think that the buyer will take all the precautions. So it might happen in many cases that a drug might reach the end consumer without being tested either in India or in that country. And this is what seems to have happened in this case as well. Destination nations, those nations which are buying this drug, many nations have their own processes. Some nations will test each and every medicine coming to their country. Some nations will only randomly check. But you have to understand, when nations import medicines, and they import medicines in huge quantity, right? Billions and billions of dollars. It is not possible for any organization, for any country to keep on checking every single medicine that they are buying. So it's more of a trust based issue. If, for example, the US FDA thinks that medicines coming from India usually are safe, they are up to the very highest standards, then they usually will not put a very strong check. But when these kind of cases come into the picture, when an Indian medicine has been found to be the reason for adverse impact, it might have a very, very negative impact in the long run. And this is where the problem starts. As I told earlier as well, whenever India usually negotiates a trade deal with developed nations like USA, or even when we try to have a trade deal with European nations, we focus a lot on the pharma industry. Why? Because India believes that pharma industry is our strength. India is the pharma capital of the world, meaning that most of the generic medicines, low cost medicines, effective, are actually made in India and then supplied to various parts of the world. India takes a lot of pride in that. So, our industry, that is the pharma industry, when that particular industry actually comes under scanner in this way, it has a very negative connotation in the long run. Because next time, when India would demand from Europe that, see, our medicine should be given access to your market, then Europe will say, do you remember what happened the last time when your eye drop came and there are people who actually got blind? So this is why this kind of an impact would have a very, very big long run domino effect. There is one other problem here. See, you would remember just a few months back, there was this case of cough syrups. Remember, there was this case of cough syrups that we had in Gambia where certain children lost their lives. Now, that was again a very unfortunate incident. But you have to understand, now it might be unfair, but the fact is, there is a difference between when an incident happens in US and when an incident happens in an African country. Again, this is unfortunate, but that is the case. When an incident happens in a, let's say, a African country, Gambia, yes, it might have a lot of impact, but even then, it does not create such a bad image for you across the entire world. But when the same kind of an incident happens in US, you would know that it will become very difficult for you now to capture high quality rich markets which are able to pay you more money. That is why it becomes more and more difficult. So that is why there are news that the government should work on the CDSCO, make it even stronger, ensure that almost all the quality checks are in place and there are more random inspections that are taking place in India. The law in India that prescribes the quality that has to be maintained is the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. This is the one that prescribes standards and guidelines for issuing license to manufacture these medicines. As you know, in India, to manufacture medicines also you require licenses, and to sell medicines also you require licenses. So you can't just open up, let's say, a medical company without a license. You can't even open up a medical store without a license. You require specific licenses for that. So it is a very highly regulated sector in India. But even then, as you can see, there are a lot of loopholes that are being found over here. The CDSCO is an organization that looks into prescribing the standards. They are the ones who have to maintain the certain minimum quantity or quality of goods that are being manufactured and sold in India and even abroad as well. Now, over here, there is another organization or an authority that you must remember. There is a question also in this. So, there is a authority called DCGI. DCGI here stands for Drugs Controller General of India. This is not a separate authority. DCGI is just the head of the department of CDSCO. So these are not different. Please remember. Just like CDSCO is the organization, the head of that organization, the person who is heading this, would be called the Drug Controller General of India. So that is the authority that usually sets the standards for the medicines that are being manufactured in India, the medicines that are being sold. Without their licenses, without their approval, we cannot have these medicines that are sold in India or they go abroad for selling. This is a kind of practice question I have here for you. Adverse reactions to Indian medicines abroad may hit India's global power ambitions significantly. As I discussed earlier as well, whenever India usually talks about trade deals with developed nations, especially, a lot of our focus has usually been on the pharma sector because we believe it is our strength. So, that sector which we believe should be given more access to the developed world market, that sector getting such a negative news does not augur well for India. So, that is why it's a concern. Anyway, let us quickly see some questions. There's a question, which is the pharma capital of the world? As I told you, India is the pharma capital of the world. Sayed, I've already answered the role of DCGI, so I think that is solved. Then I have a question from Journey. In that case, India had exported COVID vaccines to other countries, and that countries are not checked those vaccines. See, as I told you earlier as well, it's not that medicines or vaccines are not checked. These are random inspections that take place. So, for example, let's assume that I am selling 200 boxes of medicines to US. Okay. Now, out of the 200 boxes, US FDA will not open up every box and keep on checking sample from every box. So they, let's say, out of 200, randomly they will choose 8 or 9 boxes, take a sample and see if the quality is fine. They are fine with that. That is the usual approach that every country would take. But they would expect that if certain boxes are fine, then the standard should be maintained all across all the boxes. But if one of the boxes has a problem, this is where the problem starts. And this is what seemed to happen in this case also. So it's not to say that we do not have any inspections. We do have inspections. The US on their part also, they do have inspections. They do have very strict parameters of which medicines would be allowed, which would not be allowed. But again, it has happened in the past also, that there are some medicines which usually uh, escape that check and reach to the last consumer. Unfortunately, that is what seemed to happen in this case also. Okay, let's see. um then I have okay, see, as the question says, the question is mainly about this incident of Indian medicine not living up to its standards might impact India's global superpower ambitions. Now, you obviously have to say that yes, it might happen, because it is expected that when a country proclaims itself to be the leading manufacturer of medicines, you would expect certain quality to be maintained. And when that doesn't happen, that would obviously have an impact. However, that doesn't mean that India is the only country with which these kind of problems occur. There are companies that produce medicines even in the developed world where such problems might occur. The solution does not really lie in boycotting anyone. The solution lies in just making sure that the processes become better, the process become much more stringent. Anyway, let's see what is the second topic that we have for you for today. The second topic that we have is from Science and Tech, about the Nisar satellite. Now, India and US have been collaborating on a number of different sectors. One sector where the two sides have collaborated pretty closely in the past few years is the space sector. And this is again an example of the same, where ISRO and NASA have come together to launch a satellite called NISAR. So now NISAR is a new satellite which is expected to be launched in 2024. Hasn't been launched till now. Remember that ISRO and NASA have worked closely with each other. Some have ISRO has provided certain technology, NASA has provided certain technology on the other hand. The objective is that they would be able to analyze the Earth's crust a lot better. So the objective is to analyze the Earth's crust, to understand the ongoing changes in the Earth's crust, so that we can deal with natural disaster that might come up in the future in a better way. That is the overall objective of one single line. They would use radar imaging. They would go across the globe, take up as much information about the Earth's crust as possible, share that information, and make sure that both the sides are better prepared for future kind of natural disasters that we might see. Now, this partnership between US and India in the form of NASA and ISRO has been going on for a long time. The collaboration first started in 2014. So it was in 2014 that this idea first came into the picture. This NISAR will be the first of its kind in space to map the Earth completely. It will use two different radar frequencies, so there are different types of frequencies. Each frequency has a different purpose. There will be L band and there will be S band that will be used. Now, these mainly will try to have a detailed study of Earth's crust to see what are the changes that are being seen in the Earth's crust over time. NISAR here stands for NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. So this is the full form of NISAR, NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. Now, before we go deeper into slight more information about NISA, there is one more thing that you have to understand. NASA and ISRO are two very different organizations. Please understand something. Yes, ISRO is renowned all around the world, but understand ISRO is never famous for having the kind of technology that no other country has. Please understand something. ISRO is famous for doing something which NASA or other organizations would do at 10 times the cost. The capacity, the USP that ISRO has, for which it has become famous all around the world, is not that ISRO does something that no one else can do in terms of technology. But it is that if NASA does something for 500 crore, ISRO might be able to do that within 50 crore. That is the strength of ISRO. So, yes, in all those different accolades that ISRO gets, in all the good things that we hear about ISRO, let us not forget the fact that ISRO is not that organization which is doing the most advanced scientific work. That is not true. What our strength is that we are very, very cost effective. And that is why the reason why ISRO and NASA do not really collaborate on a lot of different missions is because there are a lot of different ways in which the two sides work. Understand this. When ISRO works, our objective mainly is to explore the nearby areas, nearby planets. For ISRO, their objective is let's see what is happening in Mars, let's see what is happening in Venus. Okay, let's have the Gaganyaan mission, let's send a person to space, let's see if we can study the sun. That is it. When you talk about NASA, they are the ones who are going, let's go to Neptune, let's exit the solar system, let's go to some other solar system altogether, let's see how far we can go, those kind of things. So, if you see the priorities of the two sides, these are very different to each other. Second, the reason is not that we can't do that. The reason is very simple, that is the budget. Just imagine this. If I tell you that you have to develop a vaccine for cancer, okay, and I will give you 10 crore rupees for that, you take this money, do all your research and develop a vaccine for cancer. Now, you also know that this is a difficult process. This will require a lot of money. Let's say you do something, you do some research, and at the end of the day, you prepare a vaccine, but it fails. It is not able to do the job properly, and you've already spent the money. Then you can't do anything. Similarly, now if I give you 5,000 crore rupees and say this is the 5,000 crore rupees, just develop a vaccine of cancer. Then you will try once, twice, thrice, 5 times. You know that you have the money to try as many times as possible. So obviously you will reach the goal faster than what I would, because you have more capacity. This is the exact difference between NASA and ISRO. NASA has a lot more cutting edge technology as compared to ISRO, but what we can do at the price point that we do, NASA can't do. So that is the important difference between the two. The second very important difference between the two that we have is NASA gets a lot of help and a lot of collaboration from the private sector as well. In US, in space sector especially, a lot of private companies have now come up. SpaceX, the most famous one, all of you know about it. Jeff Bezos has his own company. Virgin Atlantic, again another company. So there are a lot of companies in the US working in the private sector as well. And they are at par with ISRO and even better than ISRO. Oh, sorry, they're at par with NASA or even better than NASA in certain cases. NASA works with SpaceX in many cases. NASA, in fact, has given a lot of its contracts also to SpaceX. In India, that is not the case. In India, we do have certain private sector companies. There are certain startups that are making their own satellites, but they are being launched by ISRO only at the end of the day. So in India, the space sector has certain private participation to a very small extent, but we do not see a lot of private sector collaboration in India. So ISRO usually is dependent on itself for most of the research. For NASA, that is not the case. NASA gets a lot of research help from the private sector as well. Now, as we discussed, this particular NISA satellite will have two different bands. There are different bands that are used for different purposes. L band is usually used for GPS purposes, the GPS coordinates, etc. S band is used for NASA space shuttle. Similarly, we have different bands for different purposes. So the applications are different based on what exactly are the different types of applications that we have. So this particular band that we have, L and S band, both of these will be utilized over here. Now, if you look at this NISAR mission, it has been in talks since 2014, but it will only be launched in 2024 if all goes to plan. The satellite will have a 3-year lifetime, and the primary purpose will be to map the entire globe as many times as possible. It will be able to map the entire globe in 12 days. It will be in the low Earth orbit. We have already discussed what is their main objective. The main objective will remain to study the Earth's crust as closely as possible to make sure they can identify what are the differences, what are the changes that are happening in the Earth's crust. It will be a 2,800 kilogram satellite containing L band and S band synthetic aperture radar. These are the instruments I'm sorry, that will be used for collecting as much data as possible. Since it's a joint collaboration, ISRO is providing certain instruments, NASA is providing certain instruments. The launch will be done by ISRO only. So ISRO is providing the GSLV launch system, the spacecraft, etc. On the other hand, NASA will be providing the L-band radar, the GPS, solid state recorder to record all the data, all these things, the technical things about how to store the data, how to capture the data, that will be done from the side of NASA. ISRO, on the other hand, will mainly be focusing on launching this in the best possible manner. These are two different bands, and I'm seeing a lot of questions about that also. As I told you, different bands have different purposes. S band would operate on a wavelength of 8 to 15 centimeter, and they would have a different frequency. Similarly, the L band would have a different kind of a frequency. Both of these would have different purposes. One is made specifically for GPS purposes, and the other is to collect as much data in high resolution images as much as possible. What exactly are the objectives? What are we trying to achieve? First, it will help in earth sciences. By earth sciences, we mean collecting data about Earth and making sure that we understand how the Earth is changing. To collect as much data information as possible, to predict the natural hazards, what are the different types of challenges that we are facing in the future. It will also help us manage disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes in a better manner. It will be able to help us in preparing a better response in the future disasters. It will also help agriculture by providing more information about where exactly which crop will be suitably grown, what are the different types of land uses. For example, it might be able to see what are the water levels underneath a certain land. Is a certain crop suitable for certain land or not? Should we change our cropping patterns in certain parts of the world, etc.? It will monitor infrastructure changes as well, so that we can actually see if there are certain changes that are required. We'll also be able to map as much area as possible. We would be able to calculate very easily if the green cover is increasing, is it decreasing, in a very exact measure rather than having an approximation, and that will help us to achieve the goal of the climate change. Then we'll also be able to ensure that all our efforts, for example, let's say if there is a nation that claims that we have grown these many trees, we are fighting against this much climate change, we have reduced our pollution this much, has it been done properly or not? how to verify that. These kind of applications could also be done through this kind of a satellite. I don't know if you remember, we have discussed something called greenwashing. Do you remember this word? Do you remember this word, greenwashing? We did discuss it a few months back. Greenwashing is, and again, greenwashing is not related to patents. That is evergreening. That is evergreening. Greenwashing again is a situation where the countries make false claims about their fight against climate change. So if a country comes to UN and says, "Oh, we have grown these many trees, we have cut down pollution levels by this much," and this is all false, that is called greenwashing. So those kind of false claims, or those kind of claims that are made by different nations, that can also be checked with these kind of satellites that have an eye on the entire world. This is what the objective is. Whether it achieves that or not, that still remains to be seen. This is a kind of practice question that you can have. What are the objectives of the NISAR project that brought NASA and ISRO together? Let me see quickly. There are a few questions. Sayed is saying, why NASA is able to launch 3-digit launches per annum, but ISRO is able to do only 2 digits max? I don't think there's a competition in that. If you are thinking of why is it that our number of launches are lesser than NASA, again, it all comes down to money. As I told you, if I give you 40 crore rupees and if I give you 5,000 crore rupees, there will be a difference in how you will work. Similar is the difference between ISRO and NASA. The budget that NASA has been given, the money that they have to experiment is many times more as compared to ISRO. So it's not fair on ISRO to compare that. Then Afrin asking, what is L band and S band? So basically the electromagnetic waves through which you send signals, they are in different wavelengths, different frequencies. So depending upon what is the frequency of a certain signal, there are different bands that have been categorized. So depending upon the frequency, there is an S band, L band, they have specific purposes. Some bands are reserved for military so that their communication cannot be interfered by anyone. Some bands are kept for certain universities to do research and all. So different bands, basically these are bands of electromagnetic waves, so that they have this specific wavelength. They can communicate. For example, your 5G phone signals would have a different band that will not be the same as a military band. The military band will be very different, so that you can't hear what the military people are talking about. This is what the different types of bands are. Okay. Ritu is saying, show the image of the satellite. The image of the satellite is in the PPT. You would have got the PPT. You can see the image. Don't worry. UPSC will not ask you to make the diagram. Okay. Perfect. Okay, I'll take one more question. Amit asking, infrastructure monitoring mean, again, infrastructure monitoring also would mean, for example, let's say, I'll give you an example. So a few years back, you would have seen that the Amazon forest were on fire. Amazon forest, majorly in Brazil, they had a wildfire that was not being able to control, and people around the world were saying that this should not have happened. The Brazilian president came out and said that we have to regain some land to do some infrastructure building, etc. Anyway, so basically the purpose is, if you have to monitor what were the green areas earlier and where is it that you are cutting down those areas, you are now establishing infrastructure in those areas, so you can monitor all of that. That also is, or that is one of the purposes of this satellite. Okay, Shivam is asking, what are the uses of two different bands? So I've already given the uses. These are the different uses that you have. So different bands have different frequency, and that is why there are different uses that you have. L band is for GPS purpose. So L band will be able to give you a better direction about, or the better positioning of the satellite, where the satellite is, how much area is it covering. And S band mainly will be for collecting of the data. So there are different bands for different purposes, etc. Perfect. Yes, this is where we were. Let's move on to the next one then. The next article is about PACS, Primary Agriculture Credit Societies. Why is it in the news? What is this all about? Let's try and understand this. Um, I'm sure all of you when you read about economics and in economics also, in GS3 mainly when you read about agriculture, farm distress, etc., you would have heard this term primary agriculture credit societies. Now, what do they do? What exactly is it that they're trying to achieve? Sorry. This is mainly in the news because in the union budget, the government announced a specific grant of 2,516 crore rupees to computerize these primary agriculture credit societies. Now, in simple terms, what these societies are, these are cooperative societies. Their main purpose is to help farmers in whatever way that they can. So their main purpose is that they help their farmers in various ways. How do they help the farmers? Mainly they help the farmers by giving loans. That is one big purpose that they solve. The second purpose that they have apart from giving loans is helping farmers with everything, helping them with, let's say, knowledge, if they want knowledge of certain crops, helping them about let's say government schemes, what are different types of government schemes, etc. All of that is done through the PACS. So PACS usually is a cooperative society that helps the farmers in as many ways as possible. Now, you might say, don't the farmers go and take a loan from the bank? Why would the farmer take a loan from these primary agriculture credit societies? Yes, they can take a loan from the bank as well. But the difference here is when they go to the bank, the amount of formality, the paperwork, all the permissions that are required that the farmers have to fulfill are very, very, very high as compared to what the primary agriculture credit societies would do. So these societies would help the farmers in getting a loan at a much easier pace. They will charge interest. It's not an interest free loan because these societies also arrange money from outside. Sometimes these societies take money from the members themselves. Let's assume this agriculture society, there are thousands of such agriculture society, by the way. Let's assume a society has 1,000 members. All of them will just collect 1,000 rupees each, and that will become their corpus. Their corpus can be given as a loan to farmers who are their members, or they can try and get a loan from outside bank also and then distribute that loan within the members as well. These are the different ways in which these primary agriculture credit societies work. They have become so important that the governments have also utilized them as the nodal centers to provide various services to the farmers also. The government of India registers these organizations, the primary agriculture credit societies. These organizations, because they are in touch with the farmers, because they understand the problems of the farmers, because the farmers also trust them, that is why the government also makes sure that a lot of government schemes that are being run for the farmers specifically are run through these organizations. For example, the crop insurance scheme, giving information about seeds or distributing seeds and fertilizers to the farmers, all of that the government aims to do with the PACS. Because these PACS, that is primary agriculture credit societies, because all of these have been helping the farmers to such a large extent, because they have been giving a lot of loan also to the farmers, it is extremely important that they are digitalized, that they are computerized. Because when you are giving out loans to such a large extent, you can't just keep everything on pen and paper. At the end of the day, you have to make it a system where it is easy to verify who you are giving the loan to, is someone returning the loan back or not. And that is why the government has given this money to ensure that we have these organizations going towards the digital way. If you look at usually how the farmers and the people in villages get their loans, there are rural cooperative credit institutions and urban. In the rural areas, usually the short term loans that you get, or short term and medium term loans, you can get it from state cooperative banks, district central cooperative banks, and then primary agriculture credit societies. This is where the primary agriculture credit societies are extremely, extremely helpful. Again, as I told you earlier, yes, the farmers can go to the banks also to get the loan. No worries with that. The problem is when the farmers go to the banks, their formalities are very, very different. Just imagine this. Let's assume you require 1 lakh rupees. assuming that you have made good friends who have 1 lakh rupees, in that case, you have two options. Either you go to the bank to ask for a loan, or you go to your friends to ask for a loan. Again, assuming your friends are rich enough to give you a 1 lakh rupee loan. In that case, obviously, when you go to a bank, they will have hundreds of paperwork, do this, do that, submit this, submit that, etc., etc. And then they'll decide to give you a loan or not. On the other hand, when you go to your friend, you might not have to do such a lot of formality. This is where we have the primary agriculture credit societies that come into the picture, because they are made up of members who are farmers only. Members themselves are farmers only in this case. So basically, they look after each other. Rather than someone coming in from outside, they are farmers only that come together and have their own societies. So they help each other, they circulate the money and make sure that their farmer people or their farmer friends don't have to go outside, don't have to go to a bank, etc. The history of these societies is also very old. It is a British era concept. These societies first started in 1904. And since then, they have been an integral part of India's rural banking system, especially the agriculture banking system in India. In fact, they are considered as the last link. When you say last link, that means they are the ones who are able to reach the farmers even in the most remote villages. In the past few years, a lot more banks, a lot more bank branches have been opened up in the rural areas. That is true. But even then, we do not have so much penetration of the banks that in every village you will find a bank. There are still some very, very small villages that might not have a bank even today. In those villages, you cannot expect the farmer to go far off just to search for a bank. It is better for the farmers if they can get something where they are living. And this is where the primary agriculture credit societies come into the picture. As I told you earlier, they get money, either they collect money from their own farmer members, like a kitty party. Not that they have a party, but just so that you understand. 100 members come together, 1,000 members come together, all of them deposit 1,000 rupees each, and then they see if one of our members need a loan. They give the loan, and then they ensure that the loan actually comes back. They earn some interest also in that. Also, because they are giving a loan, they are taking the loan back. This is also good because they are then building a habit of savings in the farmers. They're also ensuring the farmers understand that certain loans have to be taken, certain loans have to be given back. When they become computerized, it will also lead to financial inclusion as well. They also lead to financial inclusion because the farmers will be a part of a system where they are given proper loans, they have to pay it back, maintain a record, etc., etc. The RBI has said that the number of PACS in India, that is Primary Agriculture Credit Societies in India, is over 1 lakh. Over 1 lakh of them. Now, this is where it's very interesting. Yes, it's a good thing that in India we have over 1 lakh of these credit societies which are able to help the farmers, which are able to give them loans. But the sad part is less than half of them are in profit. Less than half of them are in profit. Now, less than half of them are in profit. This is a concern. Why? See, how do they earn profit? Obviously, they will earn a profit when the members pay back the loan with an interest. That will be their profit. Since less than half of them are in profit, meaning that either the loan that they are giving out, the loan is not coming back, or if the loan is coming back, maybe the interest is not coming back. Because somewhere down the line, if everything was going fine, if most of the loans that they had given were coming back, then they should have been in profit. But since less than half of them are in profit, this is why there is a problem. The government believes that one part of the problem is because they are not computerized, because they don't have a proper computerized digital record of all their transactions, where the loan is going, from where the loan is coming back. That is one of the main reasons why they may be lacking and they are not being able to turn a profit. That is what the government's assumption is. Now, let's not say that it's true or false, but this is what the government is assuming. And that is why the government is finally giving a push that we want computerization to happen at a faster pace for these societies. Hopefully, these societies will be able to turn better, because again, as I said, these are extremely important for the rural agricultural framework. Because in India, when you look at the farmers in India, the reason why our farmers have not been able to increase their income significantly is because they don't have a lot of working capital. And since they don't have access to working capital, that is a problem that is being solved by these credit societies. So that is why the government is now willing to push them towards certain technology as well. We already discussed what is the significance of these societies. First, they provide easier access to credits. In fact, someone asked me, do they give a loan lesser than bank, higher than bank, rate of interest? So basically what happens is these credit societies themselves decide the rate of interest. So I'll give you an example. What happens is, and this is usual, I'm not saying it will always happen. Let's assume in a village, 100 farmers come together to make this society. They register this society that we are a primary agriculture credit society. 100 farmers come together. All of them deposit 5,000 rupees each. So now they have a corpus of 5 lakh rupees, right? They have 5 lakh rupees now. Their intention is that we will help our members. Now what happens is, let's assume this society will say that we want to help other farmers also who are not our members. Let's assume there's a farmer in a nearby village, in the next village. We will help him also, no issues. But they decide the condition will be if our own member will ask for a loan. If our own member will ask for a loan, we will give him a loan at 4 rupees or 4% interest. On the other hand, if an outsider will ask for a loan, we will give the loan at 6%. This is an example of how they work. I'm not saying all of them work like this, but usually when they have to help their members themselves, they help them in a very favorable manner by having favorable terms of loans of how to help them. When they try and give a loan to outside, to some other non-member person, then it might be at a higher rate of interest. They ensure financial inclusion, as we discussed earlier. Financial inclusion means they ensure that the farmers are properly integrated into banking system, or in a manner where they can keep a record. How much are they earning? How much are they spending? So that the money is then accounted for. The farmers will also be told exactly how to take a loan, how to return back the money. So all of them helps the farmers in the long run. These are not only loan giving centers, although we are focusing a lot on loan, financial help, but please understand, they do much more than just giving financial help to the farmers. They make sure that these financial help is given to the farmers. Apart from that, farmers also get information from the government. Let's assume, I'll give an example. Let's say the government of India has announced a PM Kisan scheme, that Kisan Yojana, right? Under which the government of India sends some money to the farmers' accounts. Okay. Now, the question is, how would the government identify who are the farmers, who are not farmers? Let's assume I go to the government and say, sir, I am a farmer. See, I have a garden and I grow vegetables, carrots, all these things. I grow potato also. Now I am a farmer, please give me money. So how will the government identify, do I need 2,000 rupees in my account, or do the real farmers need it? So in these cases, what will the government do? Government will see what are the registered credit societies with the government. So they will call them up and they will say, you give us a list of farmers in your area with their Aadhaar number, with their everything else, so that we can identify. So these organizations such as the PACS are not just for giving loans, etc. They are also for ensuring that the government information reaches the last mile till the farmers, so that the government, whenever they have any information that has to be given, or when the government has to make a scheme for farmers to see who to include, who not to include, in that case also the government can actually depend on these organizations. This is where the PCAS comes into the, or PACS comes into the picture. They also promote savings culture. How? When they give a loan to farmers, the farmers have to save money, they have to give it back. So it also, at least in theory, on paper at least, they try to have a better culture for the farmers, how to save money, how to pay it back, etc. And thus they enhance credit discipline also. How? If a certain farmer has taken the loan, the farmer is not able to pay back, then the societies will say, from next time onwards, you will not get a loan. Why? Because it is our money, the members' money that you have taken. We are not very rich people. Now you have not returned the money, so you are hurting us. So we have made a note. Next time onwards, we will not give you a loan. We will not talk to you. So these kind of actions also push the farmers towards a better financial behavior. So they enhance the credit discipline also, make sure that the farmers repay the loan on time, so that this habit develops over time as well. These are the good points. However, on the other hand, all is not hunky dory. Obviously, there are certain problems here. We already discussed one of the problems. Less than half of them are making a profit, meaning that obviously a lot of them are not getting their money back. Other problem, they are still not covering all the villages. This is 5.8 lakh actually. The word lakh is missing. Although they cover about 90% of all the villages in India, there are still certain areas where the number of these credit societies is very low. Especially in the northeast part of the country, the coverage is very low. Also, we have seen a lot of these societies also now are being, uh, what's a good word? I don't want to sound bad, but a lot of these societies are being dominated. Let's say dominate. I don't want to see a negative word. So all of these societies are now being dominated by certain people only. Certain, see, every village would have certain people who are powerful, who have become rich, zamindars or whatever you want to call them. These people then try and dominate these societies. They decide who will get a loan, who will not get a loan. So rather than actually being a democratic body where the members decide who will get a loan, who will not get a loan, some people come up and try to hijack this. Then there are not enough resources. As I discussed, a lot of these societies have money because their own members have contributed money. Now imagine if a society has 500 farmers, but the farmers themselves are poor, how much money will they contribute? And how much corpus will you have? Because let's assume you have 5,000 farmers or 500 farmers, right? All of them, let's say, contribute 10,000 rupees. Okay. Now you might think that this is a lot of money. You might think, oh, this is 50 lakh rupees. But the fact is, you also have 500 members. Even if, let's say, 50 members ask for a loan at one point of time, you will not really have a lot of money that is left. That is why there is still a problem that yes, there are a lot of these societies, but they're not covering a lot of areas. A lot of people are still not getting the money. They don't have enough resources. The RBI also points out a lot of their loans are turning into NPAs, means they are not coming back. Either the interest is not coming back or their entire loan is just not coming back. That is why, because the PSCs are into losses, a lot of them are now cutting down their loans, and the ultimate goal of helping the farmers is not being fulfilled. So yes, it is a good kind of a culture that has been going on for a long time, but there are certain issues and they need to be tweaked in the past. If you see, this is a question that was asked by UPSC in 2014. So it's a previous year question. In fact, look at what the question is. It's a long question. In the villages itself, no form of credit organization will be suitable except the cooperative society. This was said by All India Rural Credit Survey. Discuss this statement in the background of agricultural finance in India. What constraints and challenges do financial institutions supplying agriculture finance face? How can technology be used better to reach and serve rural clients? Now, please understand something. Okay, please understand something. There are two categories of students. One category of students which are majority. Majority of the students are, when they see such a question, their first reaction is, oh, such a long question, it will be very tough. And they automatically start to get nervous because they see such a long question. Are you one of those or not? There are a lot of those students. In fact, majority of students are like this. Oh, such a long question, very tough, I can't write this. There are a lot of those students. I don't know why. All that you have to do is just read it. Just read it. And trust me, whatever we have discussed today, if you just go back last 3 slides, only last 3 slides, and you will get the entire answer in the last 3 slides. Just last 3 slides. See, what is the question? Question is, discuss what are the constraints and challenges do these institutions face. We just discussed the challenges and the problems that they face. What is it? There is nothing new that you have to write. There are facts also that we have discussed. How can technology be used to serve them better? We have used that also. So please make sure, irrespective of whichever subject that you are facing, please never be scared of the length of the question. It has nothing to do with the complexity of the question. Even the most simple questions can be very long. Even the most complex questions can be very short. So please don't lose your focus, don't lose your confidence just by seeing a long question. That is not how it works. It's a comparatively pretty easy question to answer. We have discussed most of it in the class itself. Perfect. Let me quickly see what are a few questions over here and then we'll move on. Amit is asking, can there be NPAs in these institutions? Yes, Amit, we have discussed already. There are a lot of NPAs in these institutions. Sai has a question. Is this PAC doesn't have any drawbacks regarding economic issues, population? Yeah, we did discuss the drawbacks. There are a lot of drawbacks. A lot of money doesn't come back. Lack of expertise, lack of knowledge, lack of information about how to work as a bank. See, running a bank, giving loans to people is not that easy. The banks do this because they have been trained in this. So that is again an issue that they have to learn. Neha is saying, are these cooperative societies under RBI? Meaning RBI? No. These cooperative societies are not under RBI. They don't have to maintain CRR, SLR, etc. Shweta is asking, any minimum or maximum rate of interest of loan under PSCS? No. The PSCS, the organizations, the societies themselves decide. They are very flexible in that sense. See, basically, if you look at the law is 10 or more people together can come together and form a PSCS. The law is minimum 10 or more farmers or people can come together and form a PSCS. So basically, there are thousands of them. There are no minimum maximum charges. They themselves decide how do they want to work. Saima is saying, when government asks the PSCS who is a real farmer, are there any chance of corruption? Saima, that was an example I was giving, that the government may ask this through PSCS. I'm not saying that will always happen. Plus, if you talk about corruption, corruption can be in everything. So there is no foolproof policy where I can say this policy will never have any corruption. If there is a person who really is committed towards corruption, you cannot stop that person. An overtly committed person will always be very hard to stop. Deshmukh is saying, PSC is an example of cooperative society. Yes, it is an example of cooperative society. What is a cooperative society? Cooperative is when people come together having equal ownership, having equal power to do some work. That is a cooperative in simple terms. 100 people coming together, collecting the equal amount of money, having equal powers, decision making, being democratic, one person having one vote. That is what a cooperative is, as simple as that. So yes, PSCS is also an example of a cooperative society only. Perfect. Okay, I'll take just one more question because it's a important question. Kirubagar, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Kirubagar is asking, who regulates the cooperative societies? So this PCAS that we are talking about, they have to register it with the government. And when you register it with the government, you have to have a kind of election in the sense that there has to be an elected body within the society to take most of the decisions. So it's a pretty democratic process. These societies have to have an elected body within themselves to decide how will the societies run. Perfect. The next topic that we will talk about is something that was in the news since the budget and even before the budget itself. That is a Gobar Dhan scheme. If you remember, the government of India in this year's budget discussed initiatives in different areas. One area in which the government discussed a lot of initiatives was green growth. Green growth in the sense the government of India took a lot of initiatives towards conserving environment. Not just this, the government of India under this scheme called the Gobar Dhan scheme is not just trying to conserve environment. There are multiple purposes that we are trying to achieve here. And let me write it down to you. It is also about increasing the farmer income. It is also about increasing the farmer's income. Not just this, it is also about ensuring that we have an alternate fuel. All these things are somewhere down the line objectives of what the government is trying to achieve with the help of the Govardhan scheme. In simple terms, what the government is trying to do is government is trying to ensure that the farmers who have cows, etc., they can use the cow dung to convert that into biogas. That biogas then can be used in different areas. This is in simple terms what the Govardhan scheme is. The objective of the scheme is that the government has to ensure that there is energy produced from waste. From waste that will not have any value, from that you actually bring it to energy, you actually make wealth out of it. That is what the Govardhan scheme is. The government recently in the budget announced that 500 of new waste to wealth plants will be set up. Total investment will be 10,000 crore rupees under this particular scheme. Out of this, 200 will be compressed biogas plants and 300 will be community or cluster based plant. Now, what exactly is compressed biogas? I'm sure ever since you were in school, class 5 or 6, all of you would have seen or would have read about biogas. All of us would have seen the diagram of how biogas is made. Remember that this kind of a diagram that you have this dome shape, and this is the inlet where you put in all this cow dung, and then there will be outlet here, the gas will go on. Remember that kind of a thing. All these kind of things we have read in our own science books, class 4th, 5th. The same thing is being talked about here, that is biogas. Over here, one other step or the next step is compressed biogas. Now, there's a difference between biogas and compressed biogas. The difference being biogas can be used for cooking purposes mainly. It's a fuel that can be very well utilized for cooking purposes. When you compress it, then it even becomes suitable for vehicles also. When you compress it in the compressed form, it can be used as a fuel in the vehicles also. And that is where it becomes even more valuable for the government. And the government has realized this. That is why the focus is not just on producing biogas, it is also on producing CBG. CBG stands for compressed biogas. Compressed biogas. Remember, this Govardhan scheme is not a new initiative. This is not an initiative that was just announced in the budget. Just that in the budget, it was expanded even further. So, this scheme was first announced in April 2018. The full form, because every government scheme now has a full form is Galvanizing Organic Bio Agro Resources, DHAN. Those who are from non-Hindi speaking background, DHAN means money. This is a part of Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, as the name suggests. We are trying to ensure that we produce clean energy. We also augment the farmer's income, because this kind of an infrastructure, that is building a biogas plant, does not require a lot of investment. Since it doesn't require a lot of investment, it is something that can be done at a large scale. Now, usually the process that involves making biogas is anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic means, what is anaerobic, by the way? Pretty easy, simple. Anaerobic means, lack of oxygen, the absence of oxygen, basically. Absence of oxygen. So when this digestion takes place in the absence of oxygen, that is when animal waste like dung, etc., that gets digested, and this is when we have the biogas that is produced. So this entire process mainly actually has two types of outcomes. There is a solid waste that is also produced. Solid waste or solid fraction, this is called FOM. FOM is fermented organic manure. This can be used as a great fertilizer. So The solid part, after the process is completed, becomes a great fertilizer. Then there's a liquid part also that can also be used as a fertilizer. The gas part can be used sorry, as biogas later on. Sorry. So the biogas that is being produced in that biogas plant, it's not just the gas that will be produced, there will be solid, there will be liquid as well. All of that will be utilized as a fertilizer, while the biogas coming out will be used as a fuel. This biogas has majority of methane, 55 to 65%. Then 35 to 44% will be CO2 and some other gases, hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, nitrogen, etc. As I told you earlier, the simple difference between biogas and compressed biogas will be biogas is good enough to be used as a cooking fuel like the LPG, etc. It is, or it can be purified also. On the other hand, when we are talking about compressed biogas, when it is compressed, that is under pressure of 250 bar. Bar is the unit of pressure. I hope all of you know. Bar is unit of pressure. So when it is pressurized under 250 bar, it is called the compressed biogas. That is when it can be used as a green fuel for transportation as well. As you know, the government of India for a long time has been trying to search for alternatives to reduce our import of fuel. So maybe this can also help in that regard as well. Apart from the Govardhan scheme also, this is not the only scheme where the government of India has been focusing on for bioenergy. In fact, the government of India already has something called the National Bioenergy Program. There's a 5-year long program called the National Bioenergy Program. This program, apart from the Govardhan scheme, also had some other things as well. Let me tell you what this program is. This program actually says that waste to energy plants such as waste to energy plants, etc., sorry, will be used. Different processes will be applied, processes such as incineration, pyrolysis, etc. Incineration, pyrolysis mainly means burning something at a very high temperature. These processes usually are the ones that are used, and the government of India will be trying to make as much bioenergy as possible using bioplants, installing some other kind of equipment as well. Apart from the Govardhan scheme, we also have the Satat scheme, SATAT. Can you tell me the full form of Satat, by the way? Can you tell me the full form of Satat? See, if you have to pass the UPSC examination now, you have to know full form of everything. Let me see. Please don't Google, by the way. Please tell me without Googling. Okay. The full form of Satat, SATAT. Yes, it is sustainable alternative towards affordable transportation. Let me write it down. Sustainable alternative towards affordable transportation. If you Googled it, then your Googling speed is very slow. Very sorry. You should have Googled it faster. But that is what Satat scheme is. So Government of India is focusing not just on the Govardhan scheme, but on the Satat scheme as well under the National Bioenergy Program. The Government of India under this program has already set up 151 biogas plants all across the country, and 40 biogas plants are set up under the Satat scheme. Under this scheme, we will be focusing on making compressed biogas and have our vehicles which are suitable enough and which are compatible enough to run on compressed biogas rather than making a lot of changes in the vehicle itself. This is a kind of question from this part. Also, please do remember, since the government of India has been focusing a lot on sustainable environment, green energy, etc., please make sure that this vertical of the budget, the green growth vertical, where the government has talked about the Mishti scheme, the Govardhan scheme, these kind of schemes, make sure you do a lot of reading on them. They are extremely important for the examination, both in the prelims part also and in the mains examination as well, because the government schemes mainly in these areas are pretty important. Having said that, let me ask you one more question. This was a question that was asked in 2019 also. See if you can read the question. I'll read the question carefully. I'll give you options and you can choose those options. I'll give you 30 seconds of time. Read the question carefully. As per Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 in India, which of the following statements is correct? Waste generator has to segregate waste into 5 categories. Rules are applicable to notified urban local bodies, notified towns, and all industrial townships only. Rules provide for exact and elaborate criteria for identification of sites for landfills and waste processing facilities. It is mandatory on the part of waste generator that waste generation generated is one district cannot be moved to another district. Okay. I hope all of you have read this. Should I give you your options with 30 seconds? Your 30 seconds of time has started. Five more seconds to go. And your time is up. 50% people gave the correct answer, which is, I would say, not bad. The correct answer here is C. Correct answer here is C. First, second, and fourth are wrong. This is your homework to see why is it that the statements are wrong. Third, fourth statement, very easy to understand. Yes, you can take it from one district or district also. For these two, try and search why is it that it is wrong. What or how many categories is it? If not 5, then how many exactly? And why is it that it is wrong? Is it applicable to some other parts of the country as well? This is your homework. It won't take you a lot of time if you just Google search it. All it will take is about a couple of minutes and you will get to the answer very easily. Perfect. Let's move on then. The next topic that we have, that is again something that was in the news quite a lot because of the ongoing session of the parliament. See, when the parliament is working, when the people are speaking in the parliament, understand this, every word in the parliament or in the assembly is recorded, and that is for eternity, meaning that if you have access to parliamentary library, if you go to parliamentary library right now, and if I want to see which politician spoke what in the parliament 40 years back, even today you can actually get their speeches because the speeches are kept in record for the archives purposes. So that is why in the parliament each and every word that any politician speaks will be kept on record. Now what happens is, as you know, in India, the members of parliament have been given certain advantages. One of the advantages that a member of parliament has is they have complete freedom of speech within the parliament. So when the session is ongoing, doesn't matter what the members of parliament speak, they will not be accountable for it. For example, whatever they speak, you cannot hold them accountable for that in the court. You cannot go to the court against them. They have complete freedom of speech within the parliament. However, that doesn't mean that they can speak anything in the parliament and it will be recorded. So what happens is, let's say if a member of parliament is making a speech and some parts of the speech, some words, some phrases of the speech are seen to be unparliamentary. Unparliamentary. Unparliamentary means something that goes against the prestige of the parliament. Then the presiding officer of the house, the Lok Sabha speaker or the Rajya Sabha chairperson may order that these words will not go on the record. So when this speech will be recorded, when someone looks back at what speech was given, those words will not be recorded. This is called unparliamentary word. This practice is called expunging words. Expunging means deleting, basically, in simple terms. Deleting from the record. Now, I'll give you two examples. Okay, I'll give you two examples for this. One example of what happened with Rahul Gandhi. So, Mr. Gandhi was giving this speech recently, a few days back, where he was attacking the government on the Hindenburg report that had come out, and he was speaking a lot of things about whether the government is supporting the corporate, etc., or not. So, a lot of words were taken out. Let me give you an opposite example also. The opposite example is, and we have discussed this earlier also in our webinars. Remember, a few weeks back, there was this issue in Tamil Nadu Assembly where the governor had come to give the speech, but the governor did not read a part of the speech that was given to him by the cabinet. Remember that? Mr. R.N. Ravi was the governor, he was given the speech, he did not read it. Now, what happened there? When the governor left, the chief minister ensured that in the official records of the assembly, when the assembly records are kept of Tamil Nadu Assembly, the entire speech will be kept on record. And this is what the presiding officer of Tamil Nadu Assembly also said. The presiding officer of the assembly said when the governor left, that even though the governor did not speak did not read out the entire speech which was supposed to be read, it will be kept in the official records of the assembly. So if someone after some time wants to read what the governor spoke, what he did not speak, he will get the entire speech. So it happens both ways. It happens both ways. Whatever you are speaking, it's not necessary that entire thing will go on record if it is unparliamentary. On the other hand, if you are supposed to make a formal speech and for some reason you did not cover the entire speech, you left out certain words, you left out certain lines, then also the presiding officer can order that yes, this will go on the record. So it happens both ways. Now, the question here is, what is unparliamentary? The question here is, what is unparliamentary? And this is where the problem starts. The problem is that the opposition members say that the definition of the word unparliamentary is very odd. Why? Because whenever the government does not like certain words, whenever the government thinks that people or opposition members will criticize us using a certain word, they will remove this word. They'll say, no, no, this is unparliamentary. I'll give you various examples, just a bit. As we discussed, the members of parliament have been given freedom of speech and expression. Whatever they say within the parliament premises, when the session is ongoing, it cannot be taken against them. They cannot be held accountable for that, which is written under Article 105. Then we have the rules of procedure and conduct of business in the Lok Sabha. Rule number 380 gives a discretion to the speaker to expunge any words or expression used in the debate which are defamatory, indecent, unparliamentary, or undignified. This is where the problem starts, because if the member of parliament here, or if the presiding officer thinks that a certain word is unparliamentary, the member of parliament has no option and the word will be taken out. Now, over here, there's something very interesting. For example, I see someone in the chat saying, Kapil is saying, the list of words is already public. See, understand something. There is a list of words which cannot be spoken in the parliament, or which, if it is spoken, then it will not go on record. Those are unparliamentary words. But you also understand that list doesn't have, for example, curse words. You know what curse words are? All of you are Indian, so you know many curse words. I'll not give you examples here. All of you know what curse words are. There are many different types of words. Do you think there's an entire list of curse words that is called unparliamentary? No, there's no list like that. So if someone curses in the parliament, do you think that will go on record? It will obviously not go on record. That is why the presiding officer has been given the discretion. The presiding officer has been given the discretion, because no list can be a complete list that these words are not allowed. Understand this. No list can be a complete list, because there will always be some words that are not in the list but are very offensive. So obviously the presiding officer has to remove that. So the Lok Sabha Secretariat mainly has this list of unparliamentary expression. This is a book mainly sorry, that contains a list of words that cannot be spoken. And I'll give you those words as well in just a bit. Rule number 381 says that the portion of the proceedings of the House shall be expunged, and it will be written that some portions were expunged as ordered by the chair. This is what you will get in the record. You will not get what the exact words are. Those words will not be a part of the record. Those records will cease to be the records of the parliament, and they cannot even be reported by the media houses. That is even more important. For example, if you see the debates going on in our news media, although I hope you are not seeing any debates, but if you see debates in the media about what happened in the parliament that day, even the media houses are not discussing that speech, because even the media cannot, because the entire idea is that the speech should not be going public. Those who saw it live, that's a different thing altogether. In fact, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, in fact, uploaded his entire speech on his own YouTube video. He has a YouTube channel where he uploaded his entire speech. But the news media, etc., is not allowed to basically publish that speech or discuss that speech also. Now, there's a long history. It's not a recent thing. There's a long history where the governments in power have decided that certain words will not be allowed to be spoken. First such list came out in 1954. I'll give you some examples. Some of them are usual, but some of them you would think are not very harmful word. Like the word dishonest was expunged from Rajya Sabha in 2011. The word dishonesty was also expunged. That no, you cannot have that. The word shame was expunged. Why? If you see the parliamentary proceedings on television, on news, when the parliament is working, for example, let's say if Mr. Modi is giving a speech and the opposition members don't like that, what will they say? They'll keep on saying shame, 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 shame. So the word shame was used very, very regularly. Because it was used so regularly that whenever someone or any member did not like the speech that was being given by the minister, we usually had this something in the background, shame, shame, shame. So that word was also removed. The word cheating was removed. The word loot, chori, all of these were removed recently. You might like it, you might not like it, but again, it's a very long history. 1966, the word corrupt and corrupt man were removed. The word ayogya was removed in 1966. Jumla, very funny word. Jumla Jivi removed. Tanasha removed. Black removed. Dictator removed. Khalistani removed. All these words have been removed, and these cannot be part of parliamentary proceedings. There's a long history. I am not expecting you. You are not supposed to remember that entire list. So don't worry about that. Now don't start Googling what are the words that I have to remember. Please don't do that. You are not supposed to do that. UPSC will not ask that. Don't worry. Just understand the concept of expunging. Just understand what the concept is. This is a kind of question that you can expect. Allowing the presiding officer to expunge words from parliamentary speeches further underlines the need to have a neutral speaker. So again, try and write an answer to this as well. Okay, let me take a few questions before we move on. Ayushi has a question. Sorry, Shagufta has a question. Let's start with that. Is there no punishment for that person using unparliamentary words? No punishment. As you have read in Article 105, members of parliament have freedom of speech and expression within the parliament. So whatever they say, no punishment. The maximum punishment can be if the presiding officer is extremely angry, and the presiding officer can say, leave the house or suspended from the house. Nothing more than that. It all depends on the presiding officer of the house. Ayushi has a question. How can that happen if the person is saying that they will not read the scripted speech if they don't want to? I am not sure what your question is, Ayushi. Let me read it again. How can that happen if the person is saying that they will not read the scripted speech if they don't want to? I am not sure what you mean by this. Maybe you have to repeat the question. Maybe I have to repeat the question. Sabha is saying, but why removal of words? Because these words are seen to be unparliamentary. against the image of the parliament, against the prestige of the parliament. So the idea is, if someone reads the official records, official debates that go on in the parliament, they should not have a bad impression that what are these stupid things that people are discussing. So that is the idea, that in the official records, you cannot have bad language go up. Nazla has a question, whether separate list applies to Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, or is it expunged in one house if it is followed in? No, there is one single list followed in both the houses, no separate list. Mohammed has a question. Like these words, there are many more words in Indian language. Where will Parliament go to declare them unlawful? Or either it's against freedom of speech. As I told you, Mohammed, Parliament doesn't pass a law saying it's unlawful. That is why the presiding officer has been given the discretion. If you see parliamentary proceedings, although it's a waste of your time, don't do it right now. But if you see parliamentary proceedings, you will see when someone speaks something, the presiding and someone is objecting, someone is making a ruckus. Presiding officer says to his secretary that this will not go on the record, this will not go on the record, this will not go on the record. So that is what they are saying, that this should be expunged, should not go on the record. There is no law passed for this. The presiding officer has the discretion. They decide what goes on record, what does not go on record. Swarufuddin has a question. What was wrong with RG's words? He was accusing the government for a lot of things. That was wrong. That's it. He was accusing the government without proof. Manisha has a question. How do Honorable Home Minister say about Khalistan then, and what if someone wants its detail? These words are not to be spoken within the parliament. Outside the parliament, whatever is being spoken, the Lok Sabha speaker doesn't decide what happens outside the parliament. These words do not go on the record within the parliament. And understand something, and I'll repeat it, these words do not go on record. No one can stop a member of parliament from speaking these words. You can't put a tape on the mouth of a member of parliament. If they want to speak something, they can, obviously. What it means here is these words will not go in the official records of the parliament. If tomorrow you want to see what happened in parliament yesterday, who spoke what, everything is recorded. These words, these lines will not be mentioned, they will be deleted. That is the entire idea. Then Mansa has a question. What if MPs personally attack other MPs? Personally attack, I hope you mean verbally. Is it still covered in parliamentary immunity? Again, I hope you mean verbally. If it is verbally, then yes, verbally they can say whatever they want. That is what the member of parliaments do. These days, they just personally attack each other. But if you mean physically, then obviously there is law. Freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean that you will start abuse or you'll start hurting someone. If you mean physical abuse, there is no immunity for that. If you mean verbal abuse, then again, it is a presiding officer who decides. See, within the parliament, presiding officer is the principal. Presiding officer decides if you're following the law, you will be allowed. If not, you'll be asked to go out. Simple. Perfect. Okay, let's move ahead then. The next topic that we have here is basically from international relations. There's a phrase that is used very often, wolf warrior diplomacy. This is mainly used with reference to China. Now, what is this phrase all about? What do you mean by that? How is it in the news? Let's try and understand. See, China is a very unique country, and all of you would know this. I don't have to explain it to. China is a unique country in various reasons. Their economic growth, how they conduct themselves at the world stage, how they don't really care about what the world thinks of them. The way China conducts itself, there is a phrase that is used for it that is called wolf warrior diplomacy. In simple terms, wolf warrior diplomacy means China is always confrontational. Always confrontational means always looking to pick up a fight. Means walking on the road and thinking, who should I fight with? You, who's next? Who's next? Rather than avoiding a fight, they walk into a fight, they look for trouble. They think, where can we find trouble? Just let us know. They don't want to have a peaceful period of few days. They just go looking for trouble I'll give you a few examples so that you can understand. So what happened was, a few months back, in fact, I think over a year, a few years back, a few months back, a Chinese minister tweeted a photo, and the photo was of an Australian military personnel who was in Afghanistan, who was killing innocent people. Okay. So basically, again, I'll repeat, a Chinese minister tweeted a photo. The photo was of an Australian military personnel in Afghanistan as a part of the operations, and it was found to be killing innocent people. Now, it was later found out it was a false photo, it was a fake photo, it was not the truth. So, Australia told the Chinese government, Chinese minister, that at least apologize, at least say we were wrong. They were like, why apologize? Nothing. No apology, nothing. We got the photo, we just forwarded the photo, nothing else. As simple as that. So that is how China actually operates. They don't accept that we are wrong, and even if they are wrong, it doesn't really matter to them. That is how they work. Kapil has a pretty interesting question. Kapil is saying, isn't Twitter banned in China? Interestingly, it is banned in China, but the Chinese politicians are on Twitter. That's a very interesting policy that they have. Twitter is banned in China, yes, but the politicians of China are very, very active on Twitter. In fact, their foreign minister, very interesting account to follow if you can. So they do tweet a lot of things. Anyway, so basically, this is what the Chinese policy is, that if you do something wrong and you are caught, then rather than saying sorry, come out in the open and say, yes, we did something wrong. Then what? What will you do? Tell me, what will you do? Go. That is what their policy is. This is called wolf warrior diplomacy. That rather than accepting we are wrong, they double down, they become even more aggressive. You saw what happened with the balloon thing over USA. There are so many balloons now coming one after the other day. And I was just reading about this news that now US has shot down multiple balloons. And I was just thinking about this. These poor fighter jet pilots, they were trained to fight against terrorists, trained to fight against those people who are coming to attack their country. And what are they doing? Just shooting down balloons, going ahead and returning in the evening. And when their friends ask you, what did you do? Nothing, I just shot down a balloon. And the friend would say, I also do this when I go to circus, take a gun and shoot down a balloon. So what extra is it that you are doing? So again, but see, it's such an open thing that China is doing, openly invading some other country's sovereign territory, sending balloons, and they are not apologetic about it. In fact, they warned USA, how did you shoot down a balloon? How dare you shoot down a balloon? It would have, if it would have been any other country, it would have been like, oh, sorry, the balloon got there by mistake, we don't know. But because it's China, they're like, so what? It's a balloon, it can go anywhere, don't shoot it down. It will hurt our feelings. So that is what wolf warrior diplomacy is. The wolf warrior diplomacy is that they are confrontational about what they do. They want to pick up fights. They don't really shy away. What happened with India also, you see, in the past few incidences, whenever Xi Jinping came to India, when our Prime Minister invited Xi Jinping that come to India, we'll have a talk. At the same time, the Chinese troops were on the border, at the very same time. So it was something that China has been doing for a lot of years now. I don't know if you remember this or not. A few years back, China and Australia, in fact, have not been on good terms. So China and Australia now don't really have a very good relationship. So basically, what has been happening is, if you look at the map, Australia has always thought that we are a very safe country because of the geographical location of Australia. It's very far off. You know, how can any country think of attacking Australia? You have to basically travel so far away, take all your resources. So Australia has always thought that we are very safe, no issues with that. Now, what has happened is, if you look at nearby Australia, there are very small island nations, very small island nations. And basically, China has been trying to make very strong relationship with these island nations one by one, because these are very small nations. Even if you give them small amount of money, they'll be very happy. So China is giving them money, China is even giving them forces, that don't worry, your police force doesn't need to work, we will send you our forces. So now Australia is worried about that. A few months back, in an Australian newspaper, and this is true, in an Australian national newspaper. Chinese government wrote an article where they wrote about 14, 15 points, and the heading was, "Why are we angry with Australia?" It was an official article written by the Chinese government in Australian newspaper. And there were multiple points written. Why is it that we are angry with them, and we demand that these changes should be made? And those demands were something like Chinese companies should be invited, don't put tax on Chinese products, etc. Open demands are made on Chinese on Australian newspaper. Can you imagine any other country doing that? It's China, they can do that. That is what the wolf warrior diplomacy is. Now, why is it in the news? Let's try and come back to that. The reason why this is in the news is China recently has appointed a new person as their foreign minister. Recently, Chinese government has appointed a new foreign minister. So now there are talks. Is China finally going back to its other type of diplomacy that other countries do? Is China trying to soften its stands now? Because their foreign minister, who was always very confrontational, China is now looking to change some people at the top. Maybe because China is realizing that they need the world, because the entire world is market for China. And if they become too confrontational, and if the countries around the world stop buying products from China, that will harm their economy in the long run. This phrase, that is wolf warrior phrase, it's taken, people say it's taken from a Chinese action film. China doesn't say we have taken this from a film, but it's a phrase that came out from a Chinese action film. And the phrase was again wolf warrior. This picture or this movie had a lot of nationalistic themes, that China can fight off against anyone, and this phrase has since then been used at different places. Now, why is it that China has such a policy? I tell people always that when you have to judge China, or when you read about China, it is very easy to just criticize China and say, oh, they are such a bad country, they are killing people, or they are trying to trying to pressurize other nations. But please look at the history of China and you might understand something about China. I think I've discussed this earlier as well. If you look at the history of China, they are probably the most exploited nation, probably the most exploited ones. Look at the history of China. They have never been officially ruled by anyone. They have never been officially colonized by anyone. But there have been so many wars forced upon China that they never even wanted. Have all of you would have read about opium wars? What was opium war? It's a classic example of how China was forced into a war. So, just an example, what was the opium war? Basically, in China, opium was not allowed. Opium was banned in China. But British knew that if they can illegally smuggle opium into China, they can sell a lot of it. So what the British used to do? British used to cultivate opium in India, and on the ships, they used to send the opium to China. Illegally, it was banned. One of the ships was caught by the Chinese government, so China said that we will not return the ship. And British got so angry, how dare you stop our ship? We will now come and have a war with you. So British started the opium war because China caught the ship that was doing something illegal. And the British won the war, China lost the war, China was then had to pay a heavy price for that. Not just British, US, France, Germany, all these countries came to China, divided China into different spheres of influence. So China has had such a history where they have been ruled over or they have been controlled by many nations without a lot of their fault. Look at China-Japan history. Japan has attacked China so many times, and right now Japan looks like a very good country. But if you look at history, it is said that that Japanese warriors or the Japanese fighters were the worst ever. You can never have a worse fighter than Japanese. Why? Because they didn't kill people. They used to bury people alive. They used to come to China, invade China. People were caught alive, buried in the entire villages, buried, entire villages burned. So China has actually had a history where they have lost so many people because they were invaded. So China has had that kind of a history where they have had to go through such humiliation without a lot of their own fault. So now that China knows that now we are powerful enough, they know that they have to settle the score somehow. So that is how where they come from. I'm not justifying their action. Yes, if they are pressurizing a country, that is wrong, but this is where their thinking is different as compared to others. So Chinese history is very different. There are reasons why China follows such a policy. For example, Xi Jinping, as you know, has now had is in his third term. They amended the constitution specifically for Xi Jinping to serve more than 2 terms. So this also is a chance for Xi Jinping to tell the country, see, I am very powerful, I can confront any country. The US China relationships are not at a very good state. When Donald Trump became the president, he imposed a lot of sanctions on China. He said that I will increase taxes, I will increase duties. After Donald Trump, Joe Biden has also not reversed the decision. There's also a semiconductor war going on between the two sides who will get to have control over semiconductor industry. So China is even more confrontational. There are countries around the world that still blame China for the COVID-19 pandemic. China is going through its own problems. And if you realize this, not many countries right now are offering to help China in the COVID-19 pandemic because they understand somewhere down the line that China is responsible for COVID-19 pandemic because they never shared information with the world openly that could have led to early solutions. So the world still blames China for that. As I told you, there are many examples of China being confrontational. I gave you an example of Australian soldier. There are a lot of other things that you see China doing. See with India also, how aggressive they have been at the border, how they have been trying to claim as much territory as possible without being apologetic about it, without saying no, we did not mean it. They have been open about it. They have been criticizing whenever they want. See the US balloon episode. So all of these are examples of how China has been aggressive. India also has seen the same, as we have seen at the border also, even in terms of diplomacy also. Just imagine your president is in our country and on the border you are trying to acquire our land only. So all these are things that no other country does, but China has its own kind of diplomacy. Now it seems whether China wants to change it or not, because as I said, they on the foreign policy front, they have appointed Queen Gang as the new foreign minister, who comes in place of Zhao Lijian. Now, Zhao Lijian, I'm not sure how many of you know about him. He is a very famous person in international media. In the international media, there are a lot of articles written about him. In fact, he is the one who usually gives the most absurd statements. The most absurd statement that we will do this, we will do that. If you come to our country, even if you look towards Taiwan, we will destroy you, those kind of stuff. So even though he was at such an important position in the foreign ministry, but he is now being transferred to some other ministry. So it is being seen as maybe a step that China wants to maybe change its hardline policy because it is not working right now. They don't have a lot of friends left. Their closest friend, Russia, is involved in its own war. Maybe because it's not working for them, they want to change the policy. But again, only time will tell what China is thinking. No one knows. Yes, China does see that in their own neighborhood, countries are now spending more money on the military. Philippines, Japan, South Korea. South Korea has slowly emerged as one of the largest exporters of weapons already in the entire world. We have Japan, who has already announced that they will be increasing their military budget to 2% of the GDP. So China is realizing that other countries around China are also becoming aggressive. So maybe it's time to change their policy as well. But if the recent balloon incident is anything to go by, doesn't really seem like China is really looking to change its policy. They are as aggressive as they always have been, even though US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had to come to China in just a few days. Even then, they sent the balloons. They were not worried about whether he comes to China or not. He has cancelled his visit. China doesn't really care about that. So, again, whether the Chinese policy is changing or not, that has to be seen in the coming years. This is a kind of question that you can expect. What is wolf warrior diplomacy or warrior wolf diplomacy? Sorry. How has it impacted India in the past? Thank you, Tenzing. Tenzing has just corrected me. Thank you. This is Chin, right? Okay. Thanks for that correction. Okay. Before we move on to the next one, let me quickly take up a few questions. Ria is saying China has a diamond pearl policy for India. Yet, it's called string of pearls policy, basically. China never says this. India believes that China is following a string of pearls policy. That is, they are surrounding India by putting up or by establishing certain ports. They didn't accept it, but we usually say this. Janvi has a question. Uploading of speech with unparliamentary words on social media is allowed? If yes, why media houses are not allowed then? Janvi, it is not, it's a gray area actually. Uh, what Rahul Gandhi has done, uploading his speech, complete speech online, ideally it should not be done. But again, there is no law as such. Understand, there is no law as such that stops it. The only law that we have is it will not go in the official parliamentary records. Now, since if the media publishes it as a part of parliamentary records, that is not allowed. But again, it's a pretty gray area. There's no law about that specifically. So we'll have to see if some law has been made there. Parasara has a question. But China's history doesn't support its accusation on India and its atrocities as well. So treating India differently from others is a wise way forward to increase bilateral relations. Uh, okay. See, I am not, again, it's not to say that China is treating India because historically we would have done something bad or good to them. But just to correct you, what China doesn't like in India, there are certain things. It's not that China doesn't blame India for anything. China has blamed India for giving shelter to the Dalai Lama for a longest time. China believes that the first Tibet uprising that took place in 1950s, when the Dalai Lama escaped and he came to India, was because, as per China, India supported them. So China, it's not that China doesn't have anything. I'm not saying their blame is right or wrong, but China has a bone to pick with everyone. Okay, Sabha is saying China is dealing with crisis itself. Then how they are still so aggressive on borders and other matters? See, it's called projecting an image. When you want to project a strong image, you will project a strong image. If everyone believes you are very strong, even if you have fever, you will still get up and say, yes, I'm very strong. So it's just a stature that they are showing to the world. They can't pretend to be weak. That is how they work. Pratik is saying why China doesn't like India. I don't know. Ask China why they don't like India. Sanjana is saying eye drop explosion during can be attached with immunity and systemic circulation. I am not sure, Sanna, what your question is. You'll have to rephrase that. So, are we saying wolf warrior diplomacy effect on India? We discussed India has also had to face a pretty aggressive Chinese stand on the border. We have seen how China has not been willing to go back. China has not been willing to have peace talks. China is just opening up one after the other case at the border. So that is an impact of the wolf warrior diplomacy on India as well. Priyanshi, have answered this question just right now. Monisha is saying in the previous topic, recently Parliament, the word shame had been used at Lok Sabha MP or Hindi imposition. Yes, so as I told you, the member of Parliament can speak whatever they want. The only difference is the word shame will not go in the official parliamentary record. That is the only change. They can still speak whatever they want, shame or whatever. It will not go in the official record. Abhishek saying how to tackle such power. If any country puts sanction on China, it is going to affect that country itself. Yes, you cannot put sanction on China because they are the world's factory right now. So that is not how it works. How to tackle this power? Again, focus on your own manufacturing. Make sure you're not dependent on China so much. Once you're not that dependent, you will automatically become better. It can't happen overnight. This is all a long-term process. Shagufta is saying, is China doing all these things to make their country well developed? See, obviously the end goal is the prosperity of your country. End goal is to be as powerful as possible. Power is a very addictive thing. When you get some power, you want more power. No one says I have enough power now. So yes, China also wants to have more power. There is no end goal to it. But again, I am not as smart to tell you what Xi Jinping is thinking. No one knows what Xi Jinping is thinking. So I can't tell you what exactly the strategy or the long term or the end goal of China is. Anyway, next topic that we have is a pretty interesting topic from the Irula tribe. You might have heard about the Irula tribe earlier. I hope you have. The reason why they're in the news is that two people from the Irula tribe, Mr. Vadivel and Sadayan, again, apologies if I'm not pronouncing their name correctly. I don't know how to pronounce their native names correctly, but I'm trying my best. So apologies, please don't get offended. Okay. So a couple of people from the Irula tribe, that is Mr. Vadivel and Sadayan, they have been given the Padma Shri awards for their contribution. What exactly is the award for? What have they contributed? So Irula tribe are considered to be one of the oldest tribes in India's history. When I say oldest in India's history, I am going back to the time that India started. One of the first people, the first communities that ever lived in India, go back to Harappan Valley civilization, that time. These people, the Irula tribe, in fact, is connected to the first inhabitants of India. What is their specialty? Their specialty is they are the snake catchers. Their specialty is they are the snake catchers. They are well known for catching snakes. In fact, so much so that in fact US has also invited them to catch certain snakes and they have been successful. What do they do by catching snakes? They prepare or they catch their venom, they collect their venom, which is used to make medicines. They have saved many lives by ensuring that their own herbal medicines are used to treat patients. They collect venom of the snakes and they supply this venom to the industry so that all this venom can be put to good use. That is why these people and their contribution has been recognized. Finally, they have been awarded the Padma Shri. They are members of a proper society. The Irula tribe has a society called the Irula Snake Catchers Industrial Cooperative Society. Again, their objective mainly is that they provide anti-snake venom. They catch the snakes, they collect their venom, and then they try and see if we can make medicines against that. As I told you, they were recently invited to US in Florida to track down the Burmese pythons. Within 2 weeks, they were able to capture 14 pythons. So yes, they are an expert in this. They have been given proper government permissions to catch snakes. In fact, when they catch a snake and when they bring it to this society, the snakes are first done, or there is a proper health checkup done on the snakes. Only when the snakes are healthy, only when it is proven the snakes have not been hurt, only then their venom is taken out. So there's a long history attached to it, and all this work is now being done officially under the government regulations. It's an old process, it's an old practice that was started in 1978 by a wildlife conservationist, Mr. Romulus Whitaker. He was the one who identified that the Irula tribe have this special ability to understand where the snakes hide, to catch the snakes. Thus, the cooperative was started with only 11 members. Now it has over 350 members. Because they live in the forest areas, they have a lot of interaction with snakes, so they know where the snakes usually hide. They know how to catch the snakes, they know how the snakes will react. They can track the smell of the snakes, they can see the snakes from their droppings and understand how and where these snakes will be hidden. They have their own herbal medicine. The herbal medicine, again, excuse my pronunciation, the herbal medicine is Pachai Elai Marandu. Really sorry if the pronunciation is not correct, but at least run the spelling. Okay. Uh, Thamarai is very generous. He has told me what is the meaning. So the meaning is green leaf medicine. Thank you, Thamarai. So this means green leaf medicine. Let me write it here so that the others can also understand. Okay. Green leaf medicine. Thank you, Moses. He also confirmed this is correct. This is called cooperative federalism in India, when people from different states help each other. So, very good. Anyway, so basically, this is their medicine that they have. And because of this medicine, they have been usually able to avoid going to the hospitals even when they are bitten by snakes sometimes. Those who are asking me, do they kill snakes? No, they do not kill snakes. They catch the snakes, extract their venom, and then the snakes are let go. So, as I told you, when they catch the snakes, they bring them to the society. They see if the snakes are in a good health or not, whether they have been exploited. Only when they are in the good health, only when the injuries are checked, then for experimentation purposes, the venoms are taken out. And then after about 28 days, we have the snakes that are, or the snakes will then be sent back to the forest. This venom is then converted into powdered form, and then it is sold to pharmaceutical companies, and the companies then use it. The government has given them proper permission. The government allows them to catch snakes between August and March, and in the other seasons, the snakes are allowed to roam around. It is only in this season that they're allowed to officially go ahead and catch the snakes. The Elua tribe, as I told you, usually is found in the southern states of India. They are mainly located in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka. The last census numbers that we have, 2011, their population was about 2.2 lakh, most of which concentrated in Tamil Nadu. Then we have Kerala, and then we have Karnataka as well. Uh, their language is called Irula, and Irula basically it's a Dravidian language, very very similar to Tamil in many ways. As I told you earlier, their specialty is they are connected, as per scientific studies, to some of the earliest inhabitants in India. They are very closely related in the DNA to the indigenous ancient ancestral South Indians, one of those people who came to India to settle here for the very first time. So they can be considered to be one of the oldest inhabitants, and maybe that is how, from generation to generations, their knowledge has passed on. In fact, a skeleton that was found in Iraqi Gadi, that its DNA matches with that of the Ayula tribe in a lot of ways, and that is why the Ayula tribe has been considered to be one of the oldest living in India. As I told you, they have their own rituals. They are mostly tribals, so they are categorized under scheduled tribes also. They believe in life after death. They are usually Hindus, practicing Hindus, but they have different types of religious beliefs as such. Apart from snake catching, they have other occupations which are usually suitable for tribal areas or forest areas, fishing, cattle farming, etc. There are some very interesting, unique features also. Since rats destroy a lot of the grains in Tamil Nadu farms, in fact, what they have done is rats are also a part of their meal. So, in many ways, they even consume rats because rats have usually been found to destroy the plantation that they are dependent on, and that is why they try to get rid of the rats in various ways. This is a practice question that I have for you. Read this carefully. Let's see if you can answer this, and then I will take a few of your questions. Pretty easy question to answer. If you have read this, let me know. I'll just give you 15 seconds for this one. Pretty easy question to answer. Yes, Anukriti. Read? Perfect. The time has started. Yes, all those who are saying Jab He movie showed their story, yes, you are absolutely correct. They were in the Jab He movie. 54% people got this right. This is B. Easy question to answer. We just discussed. Most or majority of them are in the state of Tamil Nadu. Then comes Kerala, and then a fraction of them come in Karnataka as well. We have discussed this already. And this brings us to the end of this webinar. A lot of diverse topics we took. I hope it was enjoyable. I hope we learned some new things today. Let me quickly take up a few questions then. Okay. Tirtha Priyan has a question. Why China got permanent seat in UN and why not India? The permanent seat in the UN was based on the result of Second World War. So the countries on the winning side of Second World War, they were the ones who made UN, so they got themselves permanent seat. India was not even an independent country back then, so that's a short answer to what your question is. Long answer is very long. Rani is saying why it's always the case that China within a few years makes a lot of advantage from other countries, while India, being in good relationship for such long years, always loses and remains lethargic in its behavior. Very strong words. What should be India's strategy to counter this? I'll tell you the first strategy that I would tell you is never compare India and China. Not the same countries. Please never expect the same result. You let's hope that India never becomes China. It's one thing to say China is developed, China has money, etc. But how they got there, how they became the country they are, you would never want that on India. Read about cultural revolution that they had. Read about the leap forward or the great leap forward. Chinese government has killed thousands of its own people. Anyone who doesn't agree to government of China's policy have been killed by their own government in thousands and thousands. As a democratic country, you can never expect India to match up with that. So it's a different race where China is in, different race where India is in. Let's not compare the two. How China works is different. We are a democratic country. Our decision making process is different. They are almost a dictatorial country. They are one party system. So not fair to compare the two. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of money. Uh, Money can override or money can overpower any soft power that other countries have. So that is why I I would agree India can be much more swift. I won't say we are lethargic, but yes, our policies are very different. We focus mainly on our own soft power. We cannot compare with China. We cannot compete with them by giving them more money. China can just throw away money at different countries, but we can't. Raza is saying, I want to ask what powers does a small country like Afghanistan possess as China has been forced to withdraw from there? Sorry, USA has been forced to withdraw from there. China does not mess with them. Is it least developed and backward country? It's not that they have a lot of power. See, understand something. One thing that home country like Afghanistan has that no other country would have is time. Taliban, Afghanistan, they will always have time on their hand. They will say, okay, America is coming, let them come, let them attack, let them bomb us, but they will have to go back someday, right? And that someday we will always be here. So it's a different country, it's a very difficult country. No country has been able to conquer Afghanistan, but it's not that they have any special powers. The terrain is very different, very difficult to survive over there for people coming in from outside. Plus, Afghanistan, Taliban, they have time on their side. Other countries who come from outside, they don't have time. Saurav, I'll have a lot of webinars between today and the upcoming prelims. So I don't think this is the last meeting before the prelims anyway. Don't worry. Shadul is saying how digitalization can help PSCS reduce NPA, because it is expected a lot of these NPAs are because the records are not kept properly. Maybe the records are kept properly. If we have proper record of who, how exactly are taking the loans, if we know people who have taken a loan earlier had not returned, so maybe we'll be able to ensure that the loans are not given to them again. Okay, I'll take a last question. Saying people as people of darkness doesn't show racial discrimination. Yes, it does. We are not discriminating against them. We are just telling you what people are calling them. So yes, those who are calling them as a people of darkness are racial discriminating against them. No doubt over that. Okay, I'll take the one last question. Nisha is saying Irula tribe is in particularly vulnerable tribal group. Why are they in that, and what is the solution? See, solution to any backward tribe is what? To ensure that they become part of the mainstream, they become more empowered, they get better jobs, they get better development. That is the only solution. Plus, as to your question, why are there particularly vulnerable tribal groups? Any tribal group that is backward socially, educationally, economically are a part of PVTG. It's a long list, nothing specific about the Irula tribe as such, as to why they are here. Perfect. So this brings us to the end of this webinar. We'll see each other very soon in the next upcoming webinar. All the very best for your preparation. Thank you so much for joining in again. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you find someone in the remaining 1.5 hours of today. Bye bye. Jai Hind.